Hi everyone. So I just want to say a few words on the big political news today, which is the resignation of Scotland First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Um, I'm not going to microanalyze this, the reasons why it's happened in her career and so on, because there will be a lot to be said about that. Um, some unionists will sort of dismiss this as Liz Truss did, as sort of Nicola Sturgeon was irrelevant to sort of just another nationalist. As much as I strongly disagree with her politics, I don't think we could say that. Um, Nicola Sturgeon was a significant political figure in this country for quite a long time. Um, she made some serious errors, of course. I think she's denying it, and so has Alex Salmond. But I do think this gender recognition bill will have played some part in her downfall. Maybe not everything, but I think, for example, women SNP activists may have been uncomfortable about that. So I think that was a serious mistake, and Salmon said it was as well. But he denied that it would be the full reasoning for her resignation. But we have to be honest, 8.5 years is quite a long time in politics. She has outlasted several UK prime ministers, from Theresa May to Rishi Sunak. Today, the messages from Sunak and Starmer were quite complimentary, and they wished her well. Douglas Ross, the Scottish Tory leader, was a little bit more critical. What he said, and I haven't seen the full speech, but the gist of it was that her constant pushing for independence has created a period of constitutional uncertainty in Scotland. And I'd have to agree with that. Nicola Sturgeon, like all nationalists, by definition, are obsessed by independence. Um, and she has pushed it at every opportunity. Now, politically, her members expected to do that, right? Um, SNP activists expected to do that. Indeed, I suspect there's big political pressure within the SNP over nationalist credentials. Um, and I think Sturgeon has probably been a more effective leader than Salmond in that regard. Salmond failed the 2014 referendum. Sturgeon has failed to get independence. They both failed in that regard. Um, and despite what they say, there is not a majority opinion for independence. I think what the Labour leader in Scotland said, Mr. Sarwar, that there is mood for change is probably true. That doesn't necessarily translate as a mood for independence. Polls have consistently shown otherwise. Now, nationals will not admit that. That's what they consistently show. Or at best, they show a 50-50 sort of response. I can't think of any poll that I've come across, and this isn't like pro-union polls. This is YouGov, Ipsos, so on. That I haven't seen a single one that shows a majority for independence at this point. Um, so I do think that it has to be said that's a big part of her legacy. But she obviously passionately believed in what she believed in. I do think that although she in many ways has been the face of Scottish independence, of the Scottish independence movement, the last decade, I think she is on the more moderate side of it. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon isn't wings over Scotland, and to be fair to her, whenever there has been more ugly sectarian sentiments or anti-English sentiments, she has always denounced that. Um, but I think her handling of COVID was far too overzealous. It just went well beyond what was necessary. I think that aggravated people. I think the gender recognition bill was a big mistake. I think one thing actually is the SNP, knowing that independence isn't going to work, well, they've really waded into the culture wars and they've become very, very woke in recent years, much more so than they were under Salmond. Salmond, of course, is a controversial figure for all his legal issues. Um, but, Nicola Sturgeon has survived 8.5 years in politics. It's not an easy thing to do. And she has won and re-won Scottish parliamentary elections. So it may be that there are many Scots who have endorsed the SNP for some of the more positive things they have done, whilst not necessarily endorsing the programme of independence. That's not implausible. Very often people vote for parties for a range of reasons. There may be people voting for the SNP simply because they don't like the Tories. It's not necessarily that they want to break up the United Kingdom. I'm under no illusions. There are some. very passionate, hardcore, vocal nationalists in Scotland. I've come across them. But I do not believe that the majority. And I think English unionists might, I've seen some English unionists, or rather some English conservatives, say, oh, let the Scots make their own decision. And I have a problem with that because that attitude polarises Scottish unionists by implying that the Scots all think alike. It's a bit short sighted and it's not accurate. Um, I'm a staunch unionist, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm sad about today. Um, I don't think whoever takes over will be quite as big a figure as Nicola Sturgeon was, and I don't want to overplay her role. She wasn't a national leader in the sense of Scotland's not an independent country; it's a nation. But I don't want to overplay her role, but I do think it would be wrong to say she's just a jumped up councillor, as some have said. Um, she made a mark on history. She failed in her ultimate ambition, which was to get Scottish independence. Ultimately, it was a failure, but she obviously stood by her conviction. So I guess we could give her credit for that. I just happen to think that conviction is plain wrong. I think the breakup of this United Kingdom would be a very big mistake. I just don't think it's a romantic notion nationalists have it to be. And actually, I say romantic notion. I think the whole ideology of Scottish nationalism is overwhelmingly negative. It's a politics of grievance, politics of resentment, um, and ultimately it's a politics of division. I mean, like the Sturgeon and other moderate SNP figures will never be openly anti-English, and they'll condemn such sentiments. But I do think Scotland has an intolerance towards unionists, not just English, but unionists. You see this all the time in the likes of Wings Over Scotland and other groups, talking about we need to throw the English out and we're sick of Westminster control, ignoring the fact that many departments are devolved now, um, and ignoring the fact, as all nationalists do, that there was a clear mandate in the 2014 Scottish referendum for the country to stay together, the United Kingdom to stay together. I was in Edinburgh on referendum day. And it is a fact, the whole pushing of the EU thing, it is a fact that more Scots voted to stay in the United Kingdom in 2014 than stay in the EU in 2016. Look up the numbers if you don't believe me. That's just a plain fact. Recently, and I don't want to digress too much here, but it is related. I was on a boxing forum and I made the comment that Britain is the home of modern boxing, which it is, and I think that's not a particularly controversial statement. Most people with any sense of history would acknowledge that. But a Scottish nationalist comes out of the woodwork and he claims I was being jingoistic. And yeah, it's this knee-jerk anti-British mentality that so many nationals have. I really have a problem with. Even a statement of fact, they just can't abide anything positive being said about Britain or the United Kingdom. It makes them go crazy. Now, Nicola Sturgeon was a seasoned politician. She was above that, but ultimately she did represent a movement that has a lot of that at its core. There's no denying it. You just go into any Scottish national circle and you'll see that it's a pretty negative force, and I think it's fundamentally bad for Scotland. Um, what more could be said? Uh, I don't know who's going to replace her. I can't think of anyone in the SNP. I mean, Salmon and Sturgeon were the two big names. I'm not sure if anyone carries that sort of weight. And even if they get in as First Minister, I'm not sure. But the thing about Sturgeon was she was already a prominent figure before before 2014. We'll see what happens. But I think actually leaving aside the issue of independence, another thing I just don't like about the SNP, I think there's a big nanny state aspect about them. I think their overreach during the pandemic went well beyond anything in England, Wales, or Northern Ireland, well beyond reasonable public safety. I think it just got over the top. I mean, her constant updates where I think that aggravated some people. Some would say it was a politician being assertive and keeping the people informed. Others would say it was just overreach. Um, I'll leave it there. Obviously, if you're a Scottish nationalist, you're not going to agree with me. I am giving Sturgeon credit. I think she was a seasoned politician. I don't think she was stupid, actually. Some unionists, will just insult her for the sake of it. I don't agree with that. I think she was smart. I think she was a capable politician. Ultimately, she failed in her ultimate goal, which was to get Scottish independence. But and other policy areas, she also fell flat on the gender recognition bill. But she was a survivor. She did last 8.5 years in politics. She did re-win the SNP, the Scottish Parliament. So we can't totally dismiss her legacy as a failure. I do think, as a unionist, I hope the momentum has now drifted away from Scottish nationalism. I hope that the reality has set in that it is just not, certainly not right at this time, but it's just not Scotland's priority. Because the thing about constantly pushing independence, it distracts from all the other issues that the Scottish government should be focusing on. And I think that's one thing that polarizes a lot of people in Scotland. Right, I'm going to wrap this up. This is my old laptop, but the upload speed is just a lot quicker. Um, yeah, so I think what's going to happen is whoever replaces Sturgeon, unless they make some sort of big bold move, like they could do that. They could try that one, unilaterally declare independence, and it won't be recognised by anyone, and that will just then they'll be shooting themselves in the foot because very, very few countries, save perhaps a few rogue regimes that want to have a pop at Britain, will recognise Scottish independence. I would be very surprised if France, the United States, Canada, Spain, I mean, in the case of France and Spain, if they were to recognise Scottish independence, we could easily just say, okay, we'll recognise Basque independence. See how you like that? Um, or Catalan independence. So I just don't think it will happen that way. I think that I personally think it's fizzled out. I hope it has. But I'm not naive, These people passionately believe in what they believe in. They will keep fighting. And at some point, they might get enough momentum for another referendum. But I just don't believe that point is there yet. And I personally hope that the SNP keep shooting themselves in the foot. Okay, thanks for watching.